Guys, it's Bren and I'm here with a pretty cool video today. At least I'm pretty excited about it. This came about because recently I went through my computer and I was trying to clean up old files because I was getting really frustrated. Every time I sat down to film a video for this channel or my other channel or whatever, I was getting notifications that my hard drive was full. And I was like, what is taking up all this space? I deleted a bunch of music, I deleted all my old videos, all of that, and I still kept filling up the computer. And then I realized that I had nearly 90 gigs of pictures on my computer, just everything from over the years and some short videos. And really it all started in about 2005 because I think before that I didn't have a digital camera. I just had actual pictures that I had scanned into the computer. So there were a few of those, but starting in 2005 must be when I got a camera and I just started taking so many pictures and everything, my whole life was saved on this laptop. So I decided to go through and get rid of everything that I didn't need, which was a wild experience because I was really meticulous about it. I didn't want to delete anything that I did still want, but if I took 20 pictures of my dog chewing a bone, I tried to just pick like one good one to keep. And this process took days. It took hours and hours and hours. So I only did it because I was on break for a week between Christmas and New Year's and I was sick. So I was basically just sitting around going through pictures, sorting and saving some and deleting some. But what was so crazy about it was that, I would do like a year or two a day, and that would take me like 5 hours. It was crazy, but I was spending so much time in my life. It was really nostalgic, and there were times when I laughed, and there were times when I groaned a lot, and there were times when I teared up a little bit, you know? It was like I went and I relived my entire adult life in the matter of a week because I was just sitting a lot of times with no background noise or anything going on, just at my computer, just going through all these photos. And it was really nuts. It was a really crazy thing to do. I did end up deleting something like 75 gigabytes of pictures and short videos. So I was able to clean up the computer. But as I was going through, like I said, it was just such a crazy retrospective experience. I started kind of flagging certain pictures that really were pivotal, and I was thinking, I could do a video and kind of show you guys some of these pictures, because I think it's one thing to have me sit here and just talk about my life, it's another thing to kind of see some of this and see these people, not ultimately like anyone cares. I'm definitely doing this mostly for myself, but I'm really excited to share it with you because it's been a lot of work, and the work is not done yet because the editing that I'm still going to have to do after this is going to be insane too. But for some reason, I'm driven to do this. So this is the first video I've ever filmed for either channel where I actually have a script and it's 8 pages single space because, I'm going to have to match this up with the pictures later. So this has just been so much work. I hope you guys enjoy it, if for no other reason than just to see old pictures of me. But we better get going because it's a long one. So even though I said most of my pictures start in 2005, just to kind of make it comprehensive, I'll go ahead and I'll throw in some pictures that I have before that. So I had a pretty normal, happy childhood, and then high school was also a pretty good time for me. College was a mixed bag. That's when I found my love of punk rock and I dyed my hair orange and pierced my eyebrow. I had a few boyfriends, but mostly hung out with my friend Mike from high school, and we made silly videos on his mom's VHS camcorder.
I'm gonna teach Mike how to skate. I got it down.
Sophomore year is when I met my ex-husband on the Less Than Jake message board, and junior year he moved up to Illinois from Atlanta to be with me, and he brought his boxer puppy Bronx with him. The three of us became a family while I finished college, and then I worked while my ex went back to school. I loved Bronx so much, but he had severe separation anxiety, and he destroyed a lot of things when he was left alone. After trying several methods, we decided to get a puppy in 2005, which was Roxy. And this is when I really started taking pictures. Getting Roxy was the best thing that ever happened to Bronx. He loved her so much, and it did just about cure his anxiety. The two of them had a friendship more pure than any other I've ever known. They did everything together, and they loved each other so much. My ex-husband and I treated them like our children as well. 5 years into our relationship, we both graduated college and gotten jobs and decided to get married. And of course, the dogs were going to be a big part of the wedding. This is my bridal shower. This was the doghouse card box I made. These were the cake toppers I made. And there were a ton of other crafty things that I did too. It was a badass wedding despite the fact that the marriage didn't work out, except for this one snake-ass bitch, but I'll get to that in a little bit. We went on a honeymoon in Puerto Vallarta and came home, and life got really normal. We still just hung out with the dogs and did family stuff. I worked in marketing and design at the time and was debating going back to graduate school, which I eventually did. Graduate school and teaching and my career have obviously been a big part of my life, but I don't take a lot of pictures of those things, so that's why they're not a big part of this video. My ex and I went out occasionally, but it was very rare. Sometimes I hung out with my friends from high school when they came home from wherever they lived then. Sometimes we went out with my friend Roxana from work or my other friend from high school, but it was usually a pre-planned dinner party kind of thing. We didn't really go to bars or anything like that. Sometimes we hung out with my ex-husband's friends from work and they were a little wild, but I didn't really click with them very well. So at that point in my life, I felt like the big thing missing was social interaction. We sort of lived like an old married couple, even though we were still pretty young, and I did feel like I was missing out on something. And then Bronx got sick. He collapsed on the floor one day and just about died, but my ex banged on his chest until he was resuscitated, and he lived for another year after that. Roxy knew he was sick, definitely. My ex coped with it in the same way he coped with everything, by ignoring it. So he grew apart from the dog and stopped paying him much attention at the end. I think he grieved the dog's death before the dog actually died, but I did the opposite. I overcompensated by loving the dog even more. So when he finally died, that's when my ex and I really grew apart. We kind of just been friends anyway without much romance, but what held us together for so long was our sense of humor and our love for our dogs. But when Bronx died, the family fell apart and we stopped laughing, and the stress of it all started my lifelong heart palpitation problem. Right about the time this was all happening, my friend from high school, the snake, was also going through a divorce, so I started hanging out with her back in my hometown, and we started hanging around these people that I knew from high school, including my high school boyfriend. My high school boyfriend flirted with me a little bit, and even though I wouldn't have been attracted to him as he was at that point, sometimes when I looked at him, I didn't see this, I still saw this. Nothing happened between us, but it felt really good to be flirted with because I felt like I hadn't been flirted with for 7 years. At the same time, these people like to party. So I started going back to my hometown more and more and partying with these people, and it felt really good, not because they were good people, they were not, but because I finally had the social life I felt like I'd been missing out on. I finally felt like I was doing what people in their 20s were supposed to do, not sitting around on Friday nights watching my husband play Xbox in his underwear. So eventually we got separated and I moved in with my parents, putting me right back in my hometown so I could party with these people even more. And I had a brief fling with this guy who was a complete ass face and he cheated on me. And when that happened, my so-called best friend from high school, instead of being on my side, got mad at me because we were no longer hanging out with that group of guys. In her words, I ruined the friend group. Later on, she vandalized my property and that was it. I cut all those people out of my life. I didn't need that group of friends and I didn't need poison like that around me. What I did do instead was start hanging out with my sister a lot. She was kind of the only person left in town that I knew, and my sister had always partied. She was hanging out with these two guys that we'll call B and C, and she was dating B, and they were big-time bar people. It wasn't long after I started hanging out with those three that my sister introduced me to Adam, and we started dating, and he became part of our friend group. Adam and I also took a really awesome road trip out west to the Grand Canyon, and Vegas, and LA, and Santa Monica, and we drove all the way up the Pacific Coast Highway to San Francisco and stopped in Yosemite on the way back. The first year of our relationship was good, but that's probably where it should have ended. We didn't have a lot in common. We disagreed on a lot of things as far as religion, morals, philosophy, and politics. But the reason we always got back together was that we had all the same friends. So when we were apart, it meant only one of us could hang out with the group. So it was just easier to be together because we were all going to end up at the Rue Marché on Saturday night anyway. The The Rue Marché is the shittiest dive bar in Rockford, and it plays a huge role in the next few years of my life. B and C lived within walking distance of the bar, so they went there at least 4 nights a week, and the regular routine on any Friday or Saturday was to go to B and C's, hang out for a while, then walk down to the Rue, drink their super cheap drinks, dance our asses off, sing tons of karaoke, so much karaoke. And at the end of the night, B and C always closed us out by singing I'm on a Boat. This was legendary, and I can't even explain it. Every night we looked forward to it. We went crazy when they were doing it. The whole bar shouted the lyrics, and we danced and shouted them as well. We thought we were on top of the world, and we kind of were.
I'm on a boat, man. It's going fast, man. I got a dog called Big Bitch, me not bad, man. Yeah! World on a boat like Leo. If you own the show, then you show not Neo. Get the fuck up!
So I was finally living the life that I thought I'd missed out on just a few years later than most people do. The Rue was our cheers. Everyone knew us there. The DJ played whatever we wanted because we were regulars. We got free drinks sometimes. I had epic, fantastic nights there, and I also had absolutely shitty, horrible nights where someone was crying in the bathroom or puking outside. Sometimes that was me. We met people at the Rue and outside of the Rue, and pretty soon my group of B and C, my sister, Adam, and whoever C was dating, which was usually some younger girl who rotated in and out of the group, we all met this other group of people who also went there a lot and had a rooftop apartment also within walking distance. When we all hung out, we called ourselves the Mega Crew, which was really stupid, but we thought it was awesome. We did it so much, people at the Rue started calling us by that name. We went to a lot of parties on the roof and got to know a lot of people that way too. That's where I first met Jack, who was inside this costume, and I didn't even know it at the time. Later, I was actually formally introduced to him outside the Rue on some random St. Patrick's Day. I still hung out with some of my lifelong friends too, like Hobbs from high school, or my friend Cassie, who I've known since grade school, and I worked at the veterinary clinic my sister worked at in the summers, and I made some friends with girls there too. I spent most of my nights at Adam's during that time, but I technically still lived at home, and I still had my Roxy girl there for me. She hung out with my parents' dog, but it just wasn't the same as Bronx, and you could tell she was never going to love another dog the way that she loved him. At the end of 2012, Adam and I were just about broken up, and I finally got my own apartment, and then I adopted the first cat I'd ever had, a 2-year-old kitten I named Clover. My sister had broken up with B after a failed engagement and started dating one of the guys from the rooftop group, M, and they all hung out with Adam even after he and I broke up, but then Rachel, my sister, and M didn't work out either, and that was kind of the end of that whole era. My relationship with my sister has always been complicated. We've gotten into some major disagreements over the years that I think would have ended my friendship with anyone else, but because she's family, we usually became friends again. But she always got really close with anyone I was dating, and a lot of those guys, like my high school boyfriend or even Adam, harbored secret crushes on her because she was the cuter, tinier, sexier sister. Her and Adam were roommates for a while, and there were a lot of times during our breakup where she chose him and that group over me, just like the snake had, but I couldn't cut my sister out of my life. She's still good friends with Adam to this day, which doesn't bother me anymore, but with my sister, she's always remained more of like a party friend than a close, trustworthy friend for a lot of those reasons. Enter the next phase of my life, 2 years of being single and online dating. And the first significant guy to come out of that experience was, of course, Nick, and I told the story of Nick on this channel. He was the one who was going through a divorce, but we met online, and since I was going through my breakup with Adam, we sort of helped each other through our pain. We talked on the phone every night for a month before we actually met, but when we did, sparks flew. We hung out for a couple weekends. I took him to the Rue, of course, because we still went there sometimes, even though we always ran into our exes. And Nick told me he was falling in love with me. But then just 2 days later, he told me it was moving too fast and he wasn't ready to be in another relationship so soon after getting divorced. Broke my heart. And for a brief time, I went back to the roof and hung out some more with some of those people, including M, who was now dating a pretty cool girl named J. And Adam was even there sometimes, and we were on like an okay basis. But most of the time, I was just hanging at home with Roxy. I continued online dating. Hung out with this guy some. We went to see Less Than Jake, but we didn't really click. My old coworker friend Roxana moved to St. Louis, and I went down there and hung out with her and her kids. Right about then is when I met my good friend Zach. Zach is such a cool person. We didn't work out romantically, but I had a great time with him. We went to see Andrew McMahon together, and it was an amazing show. But we decided we were better off friends. However, because we were both super emo, we did emo things like send each other pictures of us holding up handwritten messages. When that finally faded, I did a whole lot of hanging out with my friends I worked at the vet with, or my friend Cassie, or my friend Hobbs, and I went on a few more online dates, and I hung out with my sister and whoever she was dating as a third wheel, sometimes a fifth wheel. I was talking to that Steve guy from Ohio a lot at that time, but I don't have any pictures of him since we only hung out once. And then we get to Jack. I've told Jack's story before on this channel as well. He wasn't a regular at the Roo, but I'd known him for years because he was a friend of that rooftop apartment crew. When he got divorced in late 2013, he hit me up on Facebook and we started talking. Unlike Nick, he knew he wasn't ready for a relationship, so we tried to just be friends, but we were very attracted to each other, so that didn't always work out. And for the next 4 months, we were on and off and on and off. He didn't want the relationship a label, but constantly told me he loved me and didn't want to lose me. We went to a Fall Out Boy concert, and he told me he was an addict, which added a whole new dimension of complication to whatever we were doing. On New Year's Eve, we kissed at midnight and told each other we couldn't believe we'd made it that far. In the following days, he sent me some text messages, which I guess I screen capped and saved for some reason, but it's sort of interesting to look back at now. So many things going on. Our love feels so normal and natural, like we've been doing it for years. Everything just feels right with you. You accept me. You're a strong, smart, beautiful woman. I'm realizing more and more how lucky I am. I mean, it's always felt right, but I'm feeling less scared. So for those of you who watched my video on Jack and wondered what the hell he could have been saying to me to keep me in such a toxic situation for so long, there you go. But I knew we were in a bad situation, so I told him we needed a break from each other and shouldn't talk for a while, and at first he sent me all these "I miss you baby" texts, but after a week apart he fucked some other chick and decided he needed to go sow his wild oats, and even though I knew it was for the best, I was heartbroken again. That was right before Valentine's Day, but I did spend the holiday with friends, including one of his friends, which I heard maybe made Jack a little jealous. Then I tried to get back on the horse, and I went on more online dates. There was this guy. We dated for a few weeks, but there wasn't really a spark. There was a younger guy I hung out with a few times, and there was the firefighter, Pat, that I told you about. We had a great couple first dates, but he turned out to be a huge douchebag. I'd gotten real big fish tickets for Jack and I, but I ended up taking my friend Sean. Sean and I dated for a very short time in college, then he found me on OkCupid 12 years later, which could have been a really cute romantic comedy type story, but we ended up just being friends. People did always ask why Sean and I didn't date. He was 6'8" after all, but the truth is he'd just gotten divorced because his ex-wife didn't want kids and he desperately did, and I just didn't know if I could give that to him. So we stayed just friends, and he met a nice girl a short while later, and they got married, and now they live in Madison together. I was feeling really shitty by April, still hurting over Jack and not finding much else out there, so I decided to do one of the coolest things I've ever done, which was take a road trip by myself. It was sort of like an eat, pray, love thing for me, doing something on my own, not needing a man, whatever. I hung out with one of Adam's friends at SIU in Carbondale, then drove down to Waco, Texas to hang out with Brian, who I've also mentioned in one of my other videos. We'd met online a year or so before and chatted every once in a while. When I went down there, I had so much fun, I kind of harbored this huge crush on him for a while afterwards, but that's all it really was. Then I hung out with my friend Mike from high school and his wife, who coincidentally lived about an hour from Brian, and that's kind of how the whole trip idea had started. On the way back, I drove 13 hours straight to St. Louis and hung out with my friend Roxana again. It was a really awesome trip, and I think it did help me get over Jack and Nick and Adam and all the shit that I'd been through that prior year. Back home, I started dating Dave. I've mentioned him before too. He was a really nice guy who I dated for about 4 months, but we never broached the subject of getting into an official relationship because it just didn't feel like we had that connection. It seemed like we were just having a lot of fun. And actually, dating Dave was good for me because I had someone to go to concerts with and hang out with, but I still felt single, so I could kind of focus on myself, which I needed to do. Dave and I saw tons of bands together. I lost a toenail at this Hit the Lights show, and then of course there was more Andrew McMahon. By the end of summer, though, Dave and I faded out like non-relationships do, and I spent more time hanging out with Sean and Cassie and my sister. My sister got Hazel around this time, so there were lots of Roxy Hazel cousin hangouts. One night we met these guys, and I dated this 22-year-old for a couple weeks, but it was kind of just for the ego boost of dating someone 10 years younger. I got more messages like this online, and then my friend Cassie got married. I was in her wedding along with her friend Brendan, who I'd known through her for a very long time. Cassie always wanted me to hook up with Brendan because she thinks we'd be a good couple, but at the time of the wedding, he was still somewhat involved with his ex. We still went out afterwards and had a lot of fun, even ended up back at my place, but nothing happened, except for this outfit. I went out with this guy, but it didn't work out. And then finally, after 2 years of going out with like 40 different guys from online dating websites, I met one that stuck, which was Josh. Going through these pictures of Josh and I was kind of crazy because we looked so happy back then. Like everyone else online, he'd just gotten out of a long-term relationship, but I think his had been dead for so long and I'd been lonely for so long. We were both so happy to be in love. I took him to see all my favorite bands, New Found Glory, Andrew McMahon. I even took him to the Roo for karaoke, and he met my sister and her boyfriend at the time, and we became Facebook official. We went to Cancun for a week, and it was super beautiful and warm, and they had a pretty mediocre Michael Jackson impersonator, which was perfect. There was a bar at the resort called Sport Bar, and we joked around that it looked exactly like how a sports bar set on Saturday Night Live would look. All in all, it was a great time. Then I met his kids. Bonding with them was a little harder than I thought it would be, but they loved Roxy, and that became the connection between us. His schedule was difficult for me. He had the kids every weekend, so if I wanted a social life beyond when he could get a babysitter, I was third-wheeling it with my sister, hanging out with her friends, or hanging out with Cassie and Brendan, occasionally seeing Hobbs, or going to parties with my friend Alex from the vet by myself. Here's a prime example of me hunching over to be the same height as other women, by the way. It's not like I always wanted to go out. I hung around with the kids too, and we took them to museums, went swimming, did craft projects, stuff like that. And Josh got babysitters for things that mattered, like my friend Alex's wedding, where we had tons of fun. They had one of those dress-up photo booth things, and we took a million silly pictures. Sometimes we hung out with Josh's friends, like this Cubs game with his friends from up north, who later were the ones who introduced him to the girl from Iowa, which is why they are poop heads. There were a couple times we broke up, though, because as I said in my video about him, we had a lot of fun when we went out, but lived very differently at home, and the stress of his custody battle weighed on our relationship. But every time we broke up, we always ended up hanging out again for some concert or some other reason. We went to Riot Fest in Chicago, watched the Cubs win the World Series, hung out with the kids more, went to more concerts, including Andrew McMahon's Dear Jack benefit, where we got VIP tickets through his work. I caught the set list at a New Found Glory show and met Chad and Cyrus and had them sign it. I made this badass Cubs wreath for him for Christmas, and we stayed home sometimes and did puzzles, but still made time to drink the 12 beers of Christmas at our favorite bar, go to ugly sweater parties, go to Columbus for test candles, and see the Academy Is on their reunion tour. And oh yeah, shop the semi-annual sale. And then Roxy got sick, and it was cancer. And suddenly my whole world was falling apart. Roxy was the only link I had to my past. She'd been the only thing that had been with me through marriage and divorce, losing Bronx, all the different heartbreaks, graduate school, multiple jobs, different residences. She was my constant, she was my rock, and now she was sick and she wouldn't eat.
Little girl. Oh, she just doesn't I love you, baby.
Losing Roxy was one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, and maybe that makes me lucky because I know some people have lost human family members, and it's not like I haven't, but Roxy, she was my family. She was the one I said goodnight to every night and woke up next to every morning. She was always there when I got home. She was my best friend. Josh was there for me, but he couldn't relate too well since he'd never lost a pet, but I got through with the help of my family. Life went on. We went to more concerts, including the Rocket Summer, who is just amazing live. Afterwards, we discovered Demo's Mac and Cheese Pizza in Chicago. They have a vegan version too, by the way. We went to this mini putt bar crawl in Madison with my sister and her boyfriend at the time. Our team name was South of the Porter, hence the sombreros. We took the kids to the zoo. We went to Summerfest and saw Andrew McMahon, Panic at the Disco, and Weezer, and it tore up my feet, but was maybe one of the best shows I've ever been to. We went to Warped Tour that year and saw Less Than Jake and Newfound Glory. I got a new job, which was pretty cool, and we hung out with the kids more. I spent the holidays with them and New Year's Eve with the poop heads. And then I decided a year after Roxy died that maybe I was ready to get a dog again. So I went online just to look, and that's when I saw River. I put in an application not thinking I'd actually get her, but to my surprise, I did end up getting her. When I was going through these pictures, mentally I prepared myself to relive a lot of experiences, including Roxy dying, but I was a little thrown off with how emotional I got going through the pictures of River again. This was an extremely difficult situation for me. I adopted this dog and she was great, but they called her a lab mix, and really I think she was part border collie. She had lived outside the first year of her life and she hated being an inside dog. She seemed so depressed in my apartment, and I tried to exercise her as much as I could and take her places, but she didn't seem happy. So I contacted the rescue and they started looking for a new home for her, but I fostered her for 6 weeks in my home. And during that time, I housebroke her, I leash trained her, and I essentially turned her into a completely different dog. And I almost changed my mind and said I wanted to keep her at the end, but I knew she would be happier in the new family they found for her, which had a big fenced-in yard and another dog and grandkids for her to play with. I cried when I handed her over. I still think about River and wonder if I did the best thing for me. If I'd kept her, I'd probably love her to death right now and not be able to imagine life without her. But I know I did the right thing for her. I know she's happier where she is now. And I Facebook stalked her new owner, so I definitely know that. Josh and I broke up for the final time early that spring, and that's when he started talking to that girl from Iowa. But I moved in April, and he still came over to help me put stuff together. And Newfound Glory played their set of 3 shows in Chicago in April. And it was their 20-year anniversary tour. Josh and I still wanted to go, so we still went together and had a good time, even though at that point I knew about the other girl. I didn't see Josh much though. I spent weekends hanging out with Cassie or my sister, and it turns out Adam was getting a divorce now, so because he was still friends with my sister, he came out sometimes too, which is kind of weird, but whatever. Brendan was single too, and we hung out a few times, sometimes with Cassie and her husband, sometimes just us, but it felt like at that point, if anything was going to happen between us, it already would have. One time I went to Madison by myself because I was single and bored and lonely and just wanted to get out of town for a while. I did see Josh on a few more occasions, like when he went to Columbus with me for candles and to see the Rocket Summer again. He is just so amazing live. But I spent my birthday with Cassie and her husband and Brendan. Then I went vegan, went to my cousin's wedding, went to Riot Fest again with Josh, but he was sick and we fought most of the time. I posted this picture on Facebook where I was out with Brendan and Josh said it made him jealous even though that wasn't my intent. Josh and I still go to concerts and hang out in Chicago sometimes, but we know we can't be together and we know we don't work as a couple, so these days, I mostly just hang out with my cat. So that's kind of it. That brings us up to date. And if I think back on my life, I may have said this before, but I would divide it into segments, which would be like childhood, high school, college, the years I was with my ex-husband, and then kind of the Adam Rue years, the couple years I was single and online dating, the Josh years, and then now it feels like I'm at the end of one era and about to start another one, but I have no idea what that is. You know, I hope it's not the old lonely cat lady phase. But I have no idea where to go from here, you know? But what happened to all these people? So I'll give you a little update. First of all, my ex-husband, I have no freaking clue what happened to him. We didn't have any mutual friends, didn't stay in touch with each other's families, nothing. It was the cleanest break you could ever have. Last I heard from anybody, he still lived in the Chicago area and was remarried. That was years ago that I heard that, though. I mean, he could have kids by now, which is kind of weird to think about. He never wanted them, but everybody says that, right? He probably does have them. Everybody does. But as for my other friends, you know, I've done a video on this channel about adult friendships, and looking back through all these pictures, I mean, I had all kinds of friends, right? But now I'm lonely a lot. So what happened to them all? Well, my friend Roxana, you know, she moved away down to St. Louis, and we kept in touch for a while, but now it's like, you know, she's remarried and things, and we're kind of just Facebook friends. And then I really had wanted to keep in contact still with M and J from the Rooftop crew because they were really cool people, but they are having their second kid now, so again, just Facebook friends. And the same thing happened to my friend Alex, who I'd worked at the vet with. She just had a kid. They used to have a lot of parties, but now she had a kid. They don't really have parties anymore, and we're just Facebook friends. And I think what happens with a lot of these people is that when people have kids, they stay friends with their core, you know, good friends. Like if Cassie had a kid, we would still stay good friends. But all these other people, I was kind of their tertiary friend, their auxiliary friend, and I was what dropped off when they had kids because people just don't have time anymore, you know? So I was that auxiliary friend of a lot of people who had kids, and had I also like gotten married and had kids, that would have been okay because I also wouldn't have had time for them, but you know, that's not what happens. So I'm still friends with my good friend from high school, Mike. We still chat here and there, but he lives in Colorado with his wife and kids. I'm still friends with Sean and his wife, and we talk every once in a while, but I saw him like once last year when he was passing through town because he doesn't really live around here anymore. And the weirdest thing is probably my sister. You know, like I said, we have a complicated relationship, and unfortunately right now she is in a relationship with someone, and no one in my family really approves of it. I did hang around with them for a while and get to know the guy, but then it just got to this point where I had to decide that I could no longer support that relationship that she was having. And so I'm still cool with her, but I only see her at family things because I don't want to hang around that guy anymore. So I don't even really have that. And she used to be like my go-to person to hang out with when I was single. She was always out doing something. And now I don't really have that anymore. So I still see Cassie sometimes. Brendan has a girlfriend, so he doesn't hang around as much anymore. And I have heard through the grapevine that the girlfriend doesn't really like him hanging out with me. Maybe for the same reason that Josh didn't like me hanging out with him, even though we're just friends. But whatever. And my friend Hobbs and I, we talk every once in a while, and it's always one of those things where it's like, we should get together. We totally should. And then like, we don't, but, and then the only other two people I haven't mentioned yet, B and C, the I'm on a boat guys. What happened to them? That's the craziest for me out of probably all of these people, because both those guys are now, I don't know if C is married, but he definitely has a kid and he's totally settled down with this girl. B is married, has a kid, they moved to Texas together, and it's not so crazy to think that old bar friends who used to party a lot eventually get older and settle down and have kids. Like, yeah, you expect that. It's just crazy for me because it doesn't seem that long ago. It seems like I was just there at the Roo yesterday with them singing karaoke. Like, it's crazy to think that in that amount of time, which really it's not that short of amount of a time. Like, I think the last time that I saw B at the Roo was New Year's 2013. So, I mean, like, you know, 3 years ago. But 4 years ago. Whew. I guess it has been a long time. It just doesn't feel like that long for me, maybe because I haven't found that and I haven't settled down. And as I've said before, I did everything in my life backwards. I was all settled down and then got very unsettled. And now I'm sort of just here feeling like I did all the things that I felt like I needed to do. I feel like I've lived a very complete life, and going through these pictures made me kind of appreciate all of the experiences that I've had. The good and the bad, everything, it's all shaped who I am. And I feel like satisfied with that now. But again, I just don't know what's next. But I guess stay tuned and subscribe to find out. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Even though I don't know if it's interesting at all for any of you, I had a lot of fun putting it together, and well, I'm not, as at the time of this recording, done. Hopefully the editing part will be fun too. But I think I'm really going to be excited about it when it's done and I finally get to post it. So look forward to your comments. I will see you guys later, and I'll see you over on my other channel too, because I have some videos coming up there. Thanks for watching. You can follow me on Instagram at Candles and Music. Bye.